Joining me now is Patrick O'Flynn, UKIP's economics spokesman. I mean, let's just look at the Blair warning. How seriously do you take the charge that we would be facing economic chaos were there a referendum?
Well, I take the view that economics was never Tony Blair's strong point. He would have had Britain into the euro, which he thought was a fantastic idea, and he didn't appreciate any of the structural or design flaws in the single currency, which have since come to pass, as critics such as UKIP have said from the start. So it doesn't really trouble me that Blair is taking this point of view. And I also think that the corporate class with whom he spends so much time in club class airport lounges these days clearly don't want anything which will inconvenience their very cosy profit-making arrangements at all. And it doesn't surprise me to see Tony Blair back that view as well. But the fact is that democracy is kind of important, which is why we have general elections and why we need a referendum on how Britain is governed and by whom.
Do you welcome, though, that Tony Blair is at least raising a serious argument about Europe?
Well, I do actually, because I think it's the first general election in living memory where EU and EU membership has become a central part of the campaign. Almost every general election that Tony Blair himself led Labour into, his strategy was to try and sideline the question of Europe. So it's quite interesting to see him, when Ed Miliband is taking the responsibility for the Labour effort, to try and put Europe centre of the campaign. I'm not sure how useful that is to the Labour Party position.
But it surely is a relief, isn't it, in a campaign which seems to become bogged down in parties trading rival sets of numbers and statistics, to have a serious issue and a serious argument?
Yes, UKIP has been trying to have this serious argument on this incredibly important issue for many years. And what I do think is a shame today is to see Tony Blair sort of take a moral superiority stance and say that UKIP is somehow a nasty party, because I think it's a lot less nasty to believe that your country's good enough to govern itself than, for instance, to take your country into a war on a false perspective. I mean, maybe that's a view that some people won't agree with, but I don't think Mr. Blair is necessarily in a great position to occupy the moral high ground, although that's always been a place he's felt he wanted to be.
Now, you've sent out a note to your party members today warning them to be on the lookout for the media, who you believe are mostly hostile to UKIP, and to be careful what they say. Isn't it just that UKIP are finding this election much tougher and are having to face much tougher scrutiny from the media than they previously faced?
Oh, I don't complain about that for a second. And you're right, this is first past the post general election politics. This is, you know, the real big moment, and it's a tough nut to crack for any insurgent party. My point about the media, I actually used, funnily enough, a bit of a Labour slogan: unity is strength. And, you know, you've been a political journalist for a long time, and you know, if you can sow the seeds of dissent between what one senior member of a party has said and how another one reacts, then, you know, that's a way of galloping a story forward, whichever party. And I'm sure you will, you know, do that scrutiny role against all the parties. I was just pointing it out to our candidates who, so far, you know, we have been very united, and even when we've been making controversial points, the polling evidence has shown their points that millions of voters agree with.
And just very briefly, has UKIP lost its way a bit in this election, lost momentum?
No, not at all. I think actually for us the absolute key is how we're doing in our target seats, and I won't identify those for you, but you'll be aware of some of them. And there's a huge campaign on the ground in those target seats. That's the most important thing for us. Yes, national vote share is important. We also want to get, you know, more than 100, preferably close to 200 good second places to build on for 2020. But the real test is the key target seats, and things are going fine.
Okay, Patrick O'Flynn, thanks
Thank you
very much.